Thank you, Ann, for joining us at the networking niche here at the 62nd Annual Convention of NAGC. We're having a great convention. We're most of the way through, but there's still some exciting things left. Today, in fact, we focused on creativity in the E. Paul Torrance lecture, focused on making and how making things is in our DNA as human beings. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that school folks, teachers, and in collaboration with parents can do to spark creativity among students?
Well, yes, I can. I think one of the ways to look at this, because we can have lots of suggestions about how we make things more creative, but in general, in these days of accountability, what happens is that people want to know if something's backed up with evidence. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about best practices in encouraging creativity, particularly in the classroom, we want to know some things about how humans learn, and we want to know some things about classroom practices that will increase something like creativity. So, for example, we know that by simply using certain verbs when you question children, like imagine, adapt, what if, will encourage a greater number of creative responses in kids. And that's a simple practice for a teacher to engage in, but it works. It's backed up by all this great research. But the practice itself is relatively simple in the hands of a teacher who's skilled in questioning.
Why I love being part of NAGC and serving as the next executive director is that we not only give tips, we make them practical, but they're research-based. So talk a little bit about the quality that you make sure when you're writing, when you're offering advice, when you're supporting schools and school districts and supporting the gifted, how you weave the two, the research-based with the practical.
Absolutely. It's common for particularly school administrators to want to say, so what's best practice? And you can kind of think about it this way by unpacking best practice. What does it take to be a best practice? Well, there are generally a couple of sources of evidence. You need to have research evidence, but you also need to have what we call practitioner smarts or savvy that make it best practice. So it's not as if we always go from the mountain of research down to the valley of practice. Mm-hmm. It's that those two things inform one another. So there can be a great deal of research, but if it's on a question or a practice or an issue that's not important in the classroom and is not appealing to practitioners, we get a disconnect. What makes a practice best is if it has some research supporting it and if educators will actually adopt it. So it's not enough to have evidence that it works. You have to have evidence that it not only works, but it is appealing enough to be adopted by the practitioner on a wide scale. So it's not as simple. The road from research to practice runs neither straight forwardly nor in one direction.
So you're a past president of NAGC and have done a lot of work. Can you talk about how NAGC supports the research community and university professionals?
Of course I can. First of all, it's had a long history of doing so because the origins of NAGC involved a lot of university professors and they left their stamp on the thing. But currently, of course, there's an active research community. There's a university network which brings together people who are basically interested in issues related to providing preparation for teachers and administrators. And then there are other networks that have a particular targeted focus towards research. Research and Evaluation Network, Conceptual Foundations Network are two that come to mind. And then it is quite nicely infused through a number of networks. So there is a community at NAGC that thinks research is important and is grappling with that ever-present problem of how do we take research and translate it to practice in a way that practitioners care and can access it.
So in addition to serving the needs of parents with gifted children, teachers and school administrators with gifted children, we also support the higher education community as they endeavor to get us the best and cutting edge knowledge and test these practices that may be born out of local practice, but we want to make sure that they are solid.
Yes, you submit them to testing. And obviously I would be remiss if I didn't say we support the research community at NAGC because we have the leading journal in the field, Gifted Child Quarterly. It's been here for a long time. It continues to inform the research community, and it continues to be able to be translated into practice by savvy application.
Well, I'm not a researcher. I don't have my PhD. I have an MBA, but I can tell you that I enjoy reading GCQ as well.
It's great to hear. I'm sure the present editors will be thrilled to hear that, and as a former editor of GCQ, I'm thrilled to hear it as well.
There we go. So we can get more of those documents and more of that research that's presented put into practice by supporting that. And NAGC is here to help parents, teachers, and researchers fulfill kind of the needs that we have in gifted and talented education.
Yes, you have to have the data if you want to get the ear of the policymakers.
That's right.
And that's a very practical reason for doing research. You need to get the ear of policymakers who, in fact, make a difference in the lives of kids, teachers, parents, and school administrators, all of us.
Well, that's one of the first ways that we started working together.
Indeed.
Almost 8 years ago, right?
I think so, yes. I think so. Never overlook the importance of policy.
That's right. Really, it's imperative right now because of the fact that we know that certain populations of students, those who are economically disadvantaged, those who come from racial minorities, are not getting their fair shake in our school systems. Is that right?
That is correct, and we know some things about how to ameliorate that problem. We know some of what causes the problem, not completely. It's complex and nuanced. We know some things about how to solve the problems, and what we need to do is make sure we can get the complete package. Can we get the policy? Can we get the infrastructure? And can we get the resources? And I'm not afraid to talk about resource allocation. If you want to get something done, it does take money.
It does.
It does take money.
Well, thank you for being on the team, Anne. And I look forward to working with you throughout the years forward.
It's a great pleasure.